Hey, folks, if anyone is still around because the stream that I was running decided that it wasn't getting data and decided that it was over, so it shut down. So that was fun. But we are here and back, and I am really excited today. I'm recording it just in case everything goes wonky again so I can upload it as a video because this is a chat that I've wanted to have for a long time because I am really, really happy to have with me today Matt Finch of Mythmere Games. Matt, you're gone again. You're there, but I'm not getting the guest video inside OBS, so nobody can see you. Give me 1 second, and let's figure this out again here. Just say funny things while I'm trying. This is the most bizarre technical issue I've had in a really long time, and I think it's because you went out and came back in. The guest video link changed, so which there we go. Let's try this now. We'll bring you back. There you are. You're
All right.
here. It's
Hey, everyone.
amazing. My gosh, you're never coming on with me again. So I this is great. Here, Matt, let me have you. And you're just going to go off into the void somewhere, and it'll be great. But as I said, we're here with Matt Finch. I am really, really excited with Mythmere Games. Uh, just to let you know, I am absolutely in love with Swords and Wizardry as a game. I had
Thank you.
got it sent. I got the previous edition sent to me from one of my viewers. It was just in a bundle of stuff. And I'm like, well, I've never played OD&D, so maybe I'll read this at some point. And I read it. I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And you just got done a successful Kickstarter backer for the new edition of Swords and Wizardry, which is one of the fastest turnarounds I've ever seen for a Kickstarter that I've ever seen. Like, how did you get it done that fast? And you've disappeared
Well, it
again.
was
There you're back again.
okay.
So
How do we do it so fast? Well, it was mostly done, and then during the Kickstarter, we got a lot of suggestions from people about how to bring the past editions of it more into line with OD&D because it's one of the earliest retro clones that was done. One of the things that's common for the early retro clones is they were way more cautious because they didn't have years of Wizards of the Coast not suing anybody about retro clones.
yes.
Um, and so there was a lot of caution with the very early ones. And I'd actually written Osric together with Stuart Marshall a couple of years before Swords and
Hmm.
Wizardry.
Hmm.
Um, and so we brought things back, things people wanted. They wanted to see morale rules. Um, and so as the Kickstarter was going, we were writing things to update.
Yeah, and
And then
go ahead.
and then we had done we were dropping it into an already completed layout.
Uh
Because
huh.
anyone
Uh huh.
who knows the layout is like, oh gosh, that sucks because you end up causing pagination problems. But we were able to send it to the printer almost immediately at the point that the Kickstarter funded. And then the printer was also very, very fast this time around.
Okay.
So part of it was just that we hit the right moment in their queue, and got it fulfilled really quickly. So
It
it's good.
it worked really fast, and I love how modular Swords and Wizardry is. I mean, the tweaks that you did with the Moldvay Cook Basic Expert Initiative system is really cool. Just to alternate the steps between the sides changes the whole fabric
Mhm.
of play. I'm actually thinking about importing that to my Basic Fantasy system at some point, or table at some point, if I don't have people screaming and yelling at me. But that's just me to compliment you. Have you just, and for heads up for folks, when are you expecting it to be available for general purchase at this point? I know the PDFs are available, but for print on demand or purchase from the store, when about are you thinking you're going to get that done?
Well, the print on demand is already available for people who want print on demand, and just be aware that the print on demand, binding and print quality is lower than what you get from the actual, printing press. But print on demand is available. The offset copies are also available in the U.S.
Okay.
And so anybody in the U.S. and I believe that they are available um, worldwide at this point. But I do think people may need to contact us to find out what the shipping charge is going to be.
Oh,
But
okay. Okay.
it's basically, it's, now I think once we started doing the fulfillment to um, the outside the U.S. group, which is mainly being done through a warehouse in the U.K., that we also opened it up to where people can order it. So if you go to mythmeregames.com is our web store.
Okay.
You can get copies of the rule book. So yeah.
Gotcha. And when I eventually fix the description for this video, I'll stick it in the link below so people can have it.
Okay.
It was so much fun when your system explodes on you right as you're going live.
Oh yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Swords and Wizardry as much as we probably could both talk about that for a long time. And I'm hoping that there's actually a solo player, Jesse Epic Solo, is doing a short series of solo play adventures using Swords and Wizardry coming up. So I hope he actually is able to get on today. He probably was on the
Good.
other stream and is wondering what happened. But we're not here to talk about that. So we're talking about the upcoming app. But to do that, we have to talk about an earlier book. So your first publication for Mythmere Games was the Tome of Adventure Design, which I just found because I didn't even know it was originally published back in 2010, right?
Right. Yep. This is the recent version that Mythmere Games has actually put out, and it's a big hefty
My God.
book. So there's
Tome
that.
is the appropriate word.
Yes, it is.
That can knock out most people who are attacking you. It's great. It's actually an improvised weapon for swords and wizardry. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you had that, and now it's becoming an app. And can you talk a little bit about how that transition? Well, it's not really a transition, but how that kind of additional step has been came to be.
Well, actually, transition may be a good word for it, because as I'm discovering, they work very differently. I mean, Tome of Adventure Design is a creative tool. It's not something that necessarily takes you step by step through everything that's involved in an adventure. What it does is gives lots of ideas for the parts that tend to be hard, where you're going to have some sort of creative block. And people may not know where the creative block is, so it's got a list of, here you can start with a location, you can start with a, coming up with a new monster, you can start with a mission. There are various different starting points for writing an adventure. Which probably most of the people watching this are familiar with, because almost everybody has taken at some point in time has tried doing a homebrew adventure.
Mhm.
And it's addressed to relatively experienced adventure writers also.
Okay.
And so it's overall it's more of a creative tool than a book of tables, the way that most people think of a book of tables.
Okay.
And so when we started with the Tome of Adventure Design app, the first thought was, okay, we're going to do something and it'll give you an adventure. We'll take advantage of the medium. A computer is able to assimilate a lot more data into one place much more easily. We'll aim towards something that is going to create an adventure. And we found that almost immediately that diverges from the app as a produce output is different from the app as a creative tool. Um, and so what we really wanted to lead with the app was something that followed on from Tome of Adventure Design as a creative tool. So we went back to the idea of, let's focus on this app as being a creative tool rather than being something that's just a generator.
Okay.
And the reason being that since it's nested tables, when you are trying to create a finished adventure, what you do is you begin generally and you narrow down and narrow down and narrow down. And that's sort of the opposite of the creative process, where you try to bring in new ideas at each phase and have somebody reconcile it and say, okay, here's my creative idea. So where we ended up with was that the fantasy adventure builder, as it stands right now, is it's it's Tome of Adventure Design without very much changing in terms of those tables. So they're still pretty much the same tables.
Okay.
But what it does is we group them together in various, call them chapters, um, which is really just, here's a set of tables, and we roll all those tables at once. Um, and you get the output from several tables. So it's really good for um, a blank slate. Gosh, I have no ideas. Let me hit this button, and now you get several things, and it rolls through. It saves a lot of time because it goes through all of the subtables and everything.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But for example, on the traps thing, it's, here's a simple trap, here's a more complicated trap, here's a trap that's got a rigged natural feature. It's several of the different traps tables rolling all at once, and then what you can do is you can go in and re-roll a particular table. In a lot of cases, you can re-roll parts of a table
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to continue narrowing things down.
Okay.
Um, and so that's sort of the approach that we took with it, was to focus on it as a creative tool.
So it's I mean, it's almost like you make the roll, it rolls all these tables out, and you get like uh like a framework that you can build off of, then like a whole thing,
Yep.
which is really kind of cool. And then you said there are times where you can go back and say, wait, I want to re-roll this one, I don't like that. Is that part of the process for that? I mean,
Yep.
that's satisfying. I kind of like that. Skeleton. I was looking for the word skeleton instead of framework. There we go.
Yeah. No, it's because when, if you probably do the same thing, most people I think do, when you get an online um generator of some kind, you don't set it to get one result. You usually set
Hmm.
it to give me 20 results,
Sure.
and it gives all of those at once. And so that's a bit difficult to do because of the UI, because you have to know the scope of it, and there's all kinds of different tables. One that might be 10 lines if you do it with one table, but it might be 1,000 lines if you do it with
Hmm.
one that
Hmm.
generates more output.
Hmm.
So the allowing you to narrow it down and re-roll parts of a result, that was our way of allowing you to toggle in closer to what it is that you want. So rather than necessarily seeing a whole bunch of results from the same table and picking the one you like, what you get is one result, but you can change parts of it to narrow it down.
That's cool. And how do you open up your process for the app? Like, do you have a particular starting point you can go with, or is it kind of like one starting point that you go to, and that's how it gets developed, or do you able to start at a different level?
What well, I guess best way to do it is to describe what happens when you open up the program first. So it gives you three different options. One of them is Adventure Designer, one of them is My Generators, and one of them is Table Designer.
Okay.
And if you click on Table Designer, here what you're doing is designing your own table.
Okay.
If you click on My Generators, here what you're doing is rolling from your own tables,
Okay.
or any ones that you've downloaded, because people will be able to share tables that they have designed by going to Steam Workshop.
Oh, neat.
So yeah, so people, there will probably be a whole lot of tables in people's My Generators thing.
Oh, cool.
So the part that we're specifically click to a bunch of sort of a directory over on the side.
Okay.
A light just went red on my console, so maybe
Yeah, it's you came back.
okay. So when you click on Adventure Designer, you get a directory on the side, and one of them is starting points. And that's not necessarily the only place you could use as a starting point, because you could go to, create a new monster, which I often use as a starting point for designing an
Oh,
adventure.
neat.
Um, and then there's various things, but it's all managed on that little thing on the side. And then usually most of those you can click on the little folder tab for that group of things and see even more specific. So like if you want to create a monster, well, if you just click on create a monster, you get it pulling from all the tables. But if you're like, I really want a construct, you can also choose the construct group and get, here you're going to get golems and machines and things like that.
Okay. I mean, it's a really fascinating process. So you said you can share tables. That's going to happen through Steam. Will the iPad version be able to share the tables as well?
Um, I think you'll be able to download them from. I don't have a for
Okay.
sure answer on this because I don't use Steam. I think that you'll be able to take them and put them in there,
Okay.
but there's not going to be any direct sync because the keys that work on the tablets are different
Different.
from the keys that work with Steam. So there's
Bummer.
there's definitely always going to be some sort of disjunction between the tablets and the desktop use.
Gotcha. And also, just to run up some comments from here. Someone wanted to know what dial-up modem you were using, but we're going to confirm this is not Matt's fault. This is my
Very
setup
funny,
fault.
very funny.
This is entirely my setup that went kablooey the moment that we went live for the first stream. So don't blame this on Matt. This is all on me. It's always my fault. That's the first thing you always learn. Um, but a couple others like Avenue Studio pointed out they can never have enough tables, so you've already got a fan for that. And then King Eric, his name is King Eric, the greatest of all, who have some of the greatest comments in my streams always. Pointed out that your Tome of Adventure Design is thicker than the Fiend Folio, so you've accomplished
Oh
something.
yeah,
So very
the
nicely
Fiend
done.
Folio is not
It's not really
Fiend
the Fiend
Folio is
Folio
not
is
hard to beat.
thin.
Yeah,
The Monstrous
it's thicker
Compendium,
than
that was big.
yeah. It's not thicker than my DCC RPG thing here.
No, that thing's huge.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of getting DCC in softback, which was not a wise decision because it's not
That yeah, that
it's not readable.
we often have people asking, can we get a print on demand version of Tome of Adventure? And it's like, look, if that thing has got anything other than a stitched binding, it's gonna break, and probably will do that at some point. Once we sold out of the offset copies,
Uh huh.
it's such a big, expensive book that probably that'll be, very expensive to do a reprint. So we might at some point go to that, but it's not optimal. That kind of binding is not going to be what's good for a
Yeah.
book that size.
Perfect binding. It's just going to fall apart in like right away. So for all of these cool things that are happening with the app, is it concentrated on being for OSR since that's kind of where your development is, or is it much more of a genre or a style agnostic, I guess I should say, type of game or type of
It's
app?
it, yeah, it's very style agnostic. It does have a lot of DNA in the OSR. So whatever sort of starting premises you bring to adventure design, just given the fact I started playing in 1978, a lot of those starting premises that I'm working with are going to be, OSR DNA,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's not designed. For example, it doesn't have in the tome. It doesn't have any table of existing monsters.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that once you're into your actual system, what this is about doing is helping you design the overall picture of, it's a mega dungeon. This is what the maps would look like. This is, what the bad guy's motivation is. That tells me that it's going to have these and such sorts of magic items, but it's really the inspiration side that
Okay.
tends to happen pre-system.
Mm.
um,
Hmm.
and that then once you start having these, you start putting it into your system. These would be, orcs rather than, mutant badger men or whatever it might be. But it is system agnostic. It's very much fantasy.
Okay.
Although apparently it works pretty well for science fiction. If you just look at it, I've had a lot of people tell me this, that if you look at this is the way a primitive person would describe
Hmm.
what's going on there,
Hmm.
then instantly you're back into science fiction, because just, the magic is science.
There you go.
There's a way of working that and getting some stuff that works pretty well for science fiction, but it's heavily rooted in fantasy.
Okay, but it's open for all sorts of games, which is really really cool. So, you have been asked a question, Matt. Did you start with AD&D or Basic in 1978?
Basic.
You were in Basic. Okay.
I was
Holmes
I
or
was one of the
Holmes
group.
or Moldvay?
Holmes
Okay.
Mulvey wasn't around in '78. The What happened was, I was doing a little bit of Napoleonic wargaming, and this was like I was 10 or something like that. So I had seen.
Okay. Hold on. Hold on one second. You've completely disappeared on the thing again.
I've got a green.
You gotta go. You are back. You're back.
Okay.
Oh
Okay,
my
so
gosh.
what I said was, I'd been in hobby stores and seen the monster manual, and thought that was a wargaming related thing, because it was Lord of the Rings wargaming.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't until a friend of mine, Jim, got a copy of the Holmes Basics set that I realized, okay, this is the game, and this Advanced Player's Handbook is a reference for the game, and the Monster Manual is a reference for the game. So played basic, loved it, and then like the next week I got out, and I think that week I could afford the player's handbook, and then mowed some more lawns and got a monster manual
Gotcha.
after that. But we did that shift. But the thing is that this is the generation of what I call the kit bashers, because if you started that, what they hadn't published was the DMG, the Dungeon
Mm-hmm.
Master's Guide. So there were no saving throws, because that at that time that was all in the DMG. So in order to actually play the game, you used your Holmes basic set for the rules. You used the Advanced Player's Handbook for your players and the Monster Manual for your monsters. But for a whole bunch of information, you had to go and get a copy of some of the pages of the original game so that you could see what's the saving throw for a 5th level fighter.
Mm-hmm.
So we played with 3 editions simultaneously: Holmes, OD&D, and AD&D, all mushed into the same game, which I think gave that particular generation a lot more tolerance for the idea that, you know what, official canon rules, not such a big deal. We'll just make it work with whatever we've got.
It's we just play the game that we want to play. Darn it, that's what we're
Yeah,
going to do. It's not hurting anybody. Have fun.
yeah. If it
Oh,
works, it works.
I just the kit bashing is the best. I started with Mold Bay in '81, and then got AD&D, but I kept on going back and forth between the two, and it didn't make much sense to like just go with one over the other, which was cool. We did have someone point out you're not dropping off. You keep on getting shoved to the astral plane or to the ethereal plane, excuse me. So people,
And it
someone's
may
just
be
yeah, someone's just
it's
casting
a
plane shift on you.
it's a different me coming back every time too. So if I seem like I'm inconsistent from one of the appearances to the next, that's just because Berenstein bears. It's
Are you Berenstain or Berenstein?
I am Berenstein.
That's what I am.
Yeah,
That's our reality. That's where
yeah.
we're from.
EIN.
There you go. So if you pop out again and come back without a hat, I will lose my mind. It'll be great. Um, it's just fun. So let's get back to talking Tome of Adventure Design. Who
Yeah.
is doing the development for it?
Okay, that's a company called Brave Alice, who most people know them as RPG Stories, because their big thing that they've done is actually a virtual tabletop called RPG Stories, and so they had that thing happen where you get known more for the name of your product than you do for the name of your company,
Gotcha.
but the name of their company is Brave Alice, and they are. Based out of the UK, and a lot of their devs are actually in Greece. Um, the guy who heads up the company is Greek, but he lives in London.
Okay.
And so they've been doing the programming, and so they're very much into the RPG scene. It's not just hired gun
Hmm.
um, coders doing work based on what I tell them to do. They already came to it with a fairly good um, idea of what's being done here.
Gotcha.
Um, and so they're the ones who are doing that, and they're also the ones who are really, once the Kickstarter is done, it's pretty much going to be their product. It'll be over on Steam. We're getting a piece of the thing, but the last thing that I want to be doing is adding a new sales site, Steam, to the ones that I'm already having to keep an eye on,
Yeah.
as we are. So that'll be, their thing.
So it'll be their product licensed to Mythmere Games, or you're working in partnership, or how's that kind of going?
Um, it'll still be our product, but
Okay.
we're not going to get involved in any of the stuff with updates or sales, or it'll just be over on that side of
Yeah,
things.
and getting into a whole new, I mean, getting into software development, it's like literally getting into a whole nother industry too.
Right, and getting
So
into a new industry is not a good business idea most of the time. So what Mythmere Games does, we're going to focus on books and content and so on and so forth. But this allows for what I think is a very, very powerful tool to be out there.
that's really cool. And when you said it's not a good idea most of the time, the first thing I thought of was you buying a crocheting business at some point.
Well, damn, that was my next plan. But okay,
Going right back to old TSR. Let's make dice
yeah,
bags. Buy our own crocheting company. What?
yeah,
So
they made some interesting decisions back at that point in time.
very interesting decisions back at that time. So, and did you ever think in your wildest of dreams that you would be kind of the point or the head man on what is an international effort at this point?
What, you mean the OSR
Well,
or
no,
the?
well the OSR. Besides that, but now you're literally running a project, and the programmers are in
Oh,
Greece, and where like you're in Central Time Zone, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, in Texas. Um, no, well, I mean, I think the whole concept of international has got a lot less um, oomph to it now that we're in the days of the internet, where people are talking to people from other countries all the time anyway.
mm-hmm.
Back in 1978, yeah, that would have been a big deal. That was when a long distance phone call was something you tried to avoid.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And now we just talk to someone on the other side of the planet for because we just feel like doing it that day.
I mean, the
So,
whole long distance phone call, that's not a word people use anymore, long distance phone call.
no, because it's not something that matters anymore. I
Yeah.
guess it is. I mean, it's still blowing my mind that you're doing this, and I worked in this industry, so I know how spread out everything is, but it's like it still boggles my mind that we're able to do this. So,
Oh yeah.
I remember we had a conversation with one of our partners who is like over in Thailand, and my for folks who know, my day job's a pastor, and so I had a camera set up, and people could come to the front and ask this person a question. They're in Thailand working with
Yeah.
human trafficking survivors, and the person asked the question and walked away, and this person in Thailand shouted and is coming through the church loudspeakers, "No, no, no! Don't walk away! I want to see you."
Mhm.
And like at that moment, my head exploded. I'm like, this is the world we live in. This is insane, which
Yeah.
is pretty
Well,
wild.
because let me turn the question back on you. Did you ever think you'd have your own TV show?
No, no.
1978. This is a TV show.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just me. Hi, how you
Yeah.
doing? It's just a little old me doing my reviews. It's good. So, I mean, public access cable, but I would have had to like get the cameras and stuff. So it wouldn't have been quite as fun. Um, question from okay, someone is very excited about your app, the app news. It's new to them. But we
Okay.
have another question from King Eric. What do you think of this is such an opinionated question. What do you think of living battle maps, like people who have built a gaming table with a big screen TV into it that the players can put their minis on?
I mean, I like them. People may not know that for a while I did a show where I had a camera and was looking at miniatures. I mean, I'm not against miniatures at all. I tend to be more of a theater of the mind
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
sort of DM. But when I'm running a game at a table, maybe the best way to answer it is what's my ideal table setup.
There you go.
Um, it's a chess battle mat grid,
Okay.
um, and then very very low walls, like a half inch high, no more, because if the high ones, you tend to, if you're sitting on the table, you can't really see the minis or the squares. But I do think you definitely need something to figure out, was my guy in the blast of the fireball or was he outside of the blast of the fireball?
Okay.
And sometimes it's a lot easier to explain a room if you just throw down some little blocks to show the thing. Um,
He is.
so that's my ideal.
Okay. You've paused. Hold on. You've disappeared again. Come back. There you are. You're back.
All right, I'm back.
Darn, you came back too fast. It's great.
I managed it. I did it.
Reality shift. So that's your ideal setup with having at least something in the low walls. But you're like people who put the living TVs on. You're not one of the old grumpy
I
grognards who's like, that's not the way it should be done.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is no way it should be done. The question for anything is what works, well for the group. And if you've got some people who are super tactical, then maybe you want to get more with that. And if you've got people who, if your group really doesn't care about that, then theater of the mind is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's a question of what works for the group. For me as a DM, it's easiest with a grid and minimalist terrain. But
Yeah, I've taken to just to answer King Air's, not that he asked me, but I actually have to have a digital screen. I have to have a TV there, and I actually do digital minis because if I used real minis, I'm a spaz, and they would all end up like embedded in walls somewhere because
sure,
I would
yeah.
go to pick it up and they would just get knocked over and fly. So I'm one of those strange people, which is good. Matt Katz polymorph. we've got, you're going to the ethereal plane. We're doing Mandela effect. People are saying you do polymorph things. It's really fun.
I'm a
So
magic man.
you're just a magic man, which is good. So eventually, we have talked about the app at some point, but I'm just having a good time chatting in general with you.
Yeah.
So Tome Adventure Design, it is currently being kickstarted.
Mhm.
What is the tier of rewards for people to get to? And I folks, it was in the original description for the stream. I will have it down when I go back and edit this and make it look pretty on the website. But how do people back it, and what's the current cost to kind of buy into it?
Well, the basic cost is $40, and that gets you a tablet key. It gets you uh, and yeah, okay. It gets you a tablet key. It gets you a Steam key for the computer, and it also, if you want one, it'll get you a download code if you want to use it freestanding on your computer without using Steam, which
Gotcha.
I don't recommend. I don't recommend that until later because we're still catching a typo. Almost every time that you use the thing, there's something that's off. There will probably be a lot of updates, and if you are using it freestanding, you're going to have to redo it every single time. So I'd
Gotcha.
certainly recommend using Steam for the first couple months. The but there are some people who don't have internet access or whatever it might be. So the $40 is the basic one. I think in reality there are only two main tiers, because one, there's a tier that lets you put your name in the credits, and what that is it's really just a way of somebody kicking in a few extra bucks to say thank you. um, and then there's the commercial license, which most people are not going to need. If you are going to do performances of, we're going to roll up a thing, and it's not a review, but then you would need something like that. Or if you were going to just publish raw output from the thing, then you would need a commercial license. Most people don't
Gotcha.
need that. The real two issues are the $40 one, which does not have extra tables,
Mm-hmm.
and the premium DLC version of it. I forget whether that's the second to top or the top, but the one that has the premium DLC uh, in it is the other one, and that one will have extra tables. And I'm keeping a running list of the completed extra tables that are going to be in there. There's an inn generator, there's a town generator,
Oh,
there is a history of a magic item generator. There are a bunch of name generators which are required in order to have a magic item history generator. So those are all in there. So there's, like, ancient Greek names, there's medieval Welsh names, there's a sword and sorcery name generator. I think that's the women's names, because I'm not sure whether I had one for men that
okay.
I had
Okay.
created, but it's that sort of thing. So it's one or the other, the $40, or with the premium DLC. In
Nice.
both cases, in both cases, you'll get access to um, uh, the Steam Workshop, where people can upload tables. So you'll be able to upload tables. You'll be able to download tables that other people have put up, and that, I think, that's really going to be the main source of outside tables that people use, is probably going to be via that
Okay.
thing. So
Cool. And I have a little bit of a bone to pick as you were describing all the extra tables for there, is that you're going to get me into trouble with my wife when she sees the charge on the credit card. So that makes me sad. The commercial license. So if folks are doing a live stream on YouTube or someplace like that, um, they do need to buy the commercial license.
well, see, here's the thing: it's just copyright law. The idea of the commercial license is that this is just a safe harbor for somebody who's doing something that might break copyright law.
Okay. Okay.
So if you are doing a review of a product, you're clear. You can do a review of a product without
Right.
any concerns.
You've
This would
disappeared,
be
Matt.
somebody
There you're
who's
back.
basically, "Oh, this week we're going to generate." Okay, on our show this week, we're going to do uh, we're going to generate a dungeon using. Am I
Okay.
back? It's flicking in and out.
You are
Uh,
back. You're back. You're back.
Oh, okay, so if you're going to do a performance where this week on the show we're going to generate an adventure using Tome Adventure Design, and you're showing the UI, that's technically a copyright violation. So we want to give people a way of handling that without having to worry about it. So it's just, if you're going to do something like that, you can get a commercial license. It's like $20, and then you don't have to worry about it. And the same thing with, if you want to repeat exact phrase, exact words from the thing,
Gotcha.
that would be a copyright violation. Here's a safe harbor: pay $20, you're in the clear on that. So it's, um, it's more to solve the problem of people who are in the corner cases
Hmm.
than it is to aggressively try and market a commercial license.
No,
Because
and
a lot of stuff you can do with this, you can do completely without violating copyright.
it's not onerous. You said it was like $20
Yeah,
instead of like charging like $400 for
yeah,
a
no.
commercial license. That's not bad at all. Um, and to talk about the interior of it, so you have the layout of the tome, and I gotta say that I've never seen a book that has been printed recently where tome is the perfect name for it. Like that's like the perfect, like you brought that off the shelf because I'd never seen one in person, I was actually frightened for my life for a second, so that was fun. It's like it's the D12 of books; it can just knock you out. Um, so you have that, but then you have this app coming in. How do you try to mesh those two so that they look like they're related products, even if they're not the same one?
Well, I think you can. The background artwork is actually the same texture as what was used for the cover of the book, and we have got pieces of art from the book that show up in there. It's got some of the same arrangement. You know, the micro prompt corner of the eye inspirations are on the margin the same way that they are on the inside of the book. So I think it has a lot of the same feel to it
Okay.
in terms of the visual appearance. What's startling to me again is how differently they feel in operation.
Mm-hmm.
So because I really didn't expect that. I expected that they would be a substitute for each other, and they're really not. I mean, I think the optimal way of using these is probably messing around on your computer screen, but having the book over here. And if you're like, okay, well, this is where this is taking me, and it's an interesting thing, then look in the book, and there's your whole list of things all put in front of you at once.
Oh, okay. So you can go back. Can you actually view the tables individually inside the app?
No, because you have no idea how large or small a table is going to be, or how many columns it's going to be,
Gotcha.
and so when you're in the constraints of when you're designing an app, you have to know exactly what are the dimensions and how long is it going to be, and you just don't. So that's why because we had a lot of people say, well, why don't you show the whole table once somebody gets a result, and it wouldn't work well like that. So.
Yeah, the table's extending like past the screen by about 12 inches, and that's
Right.
always fun to scroll vertically or horizontally. So
Yeah.
wee, which is good. Um, and so the Kickstarter ends when?
Oh, well, that's a good question. It's about 2 weeks, a little bit less than 2 weeks, I think.
Okay, so people have about
So,
2 weeks to jump in if they want to. Um,
yeah, I think
ev-
it's the 24th.
and everybody can commit on chat right now if you're actually going to do it. Make us feel good.
Yeah.
And then release is going to be when?
It will be as soon as the funds clear from Kickstarter to us, we will start fulfilling because we are actually already done with the programming,
Okay.
absent, the fixing the typos and so on and so forth. But we'll do a distribution to people basically as soon as we've got the surveys back, as soon as all of the stuff is done. But the actual coding is done, so it's
Okay.
ready to go out immediately.
Oh wow! So you're before the end of the year, pretty much, as you're
Yeah.
expecting this to
Oh
go
yeah.
out. That's again the fast turnovers with Mythmere Games. You're going to start creating yourself an expectation that people are just going to be like, I'm going to back this and get it 6 months before they say it's actually going to come out. It'd be great.
I know, right? Well, here's the thing. We uh, our experience based on the old Tome of Adventure Design one was that as soon as you put up your pre-launch page, somebody's going to invade Ukraine, and everyone's going to have all sorts of shipping difficulties. And so when we did that one, we had 3 months before the thing got printed from the point that we gave the order. And like I said, with Swords and Wizardry, it was less than a month from the point that we pulled the trigger and got it in the warehouse. So
Yeah.
we've got this idea that when you're doing a Kickstarter, it's going to take forever to fulfill. And I guess that's worked out to our benefit because now people are like, wow, you fulfill really fast. And we're like, because we thought it was going to take a lot longer. Honestly, we did. It was our past experience is that there's all kinds of calamities. So
I went on vacation and came back and it was sitting on my garage. My neighbor had put it away. I was like, well, I wasn't expecting this till October, so that was fun. So it's
yeah.
great expectations for that, and hopefully we will not have more invasions because that's a nightmare. Um,
Well, we just did
I
actually.
know I'm
That
terrified of this. Please,
we
just
Yeah, right. Let's keep on going. Keep on going. So
let's not let. Can we try not killing each other? That would be a really good idea. Let's keep that. We'll
yeah.
keep that to the game. That would be a nice idea. We have these games where we can do these cool violent things. Which let's do it in there. And whoever wins the table wins whatever conflict you are having. It seems to be a better idea. Um, so I mean, really, that's pretty much what I have for you about the app. Do you have anything coming up next on the horizon that you're able to share at this point?
Sure. The next Swords and Wizardry Kickstarter that we do is going to be in spring, hopefully March, but not 100% sure. And that will be it'll be one book of optional supplemental rules, um, sort of along the lines of how we did with the initiative system. Here's the official one that you can work with if you're reading this book for the first time and you need somebody to tell you do it this way. There's the default, and then here are the various options with discussions about what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, there'll be a bunch of new character classes, and with the caveat that there are some people who the whole reason they enjoy this game is that the character classes are very archetypal.
Mm-hmm.
There are only a few of them, and you develop it from within, with the referee giving you whatever additional weird things you get, and that's the way the game works. um, but there are also a lot of people who would like to. I would like to be a barbarian or a bard, or one of the various other classes, and have something in the rules that distinguishes my abilities when playing that somewhat less broad archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Something in the rules that reflects that decision to go in that direction. And so there are a bunch of those. We've got. Some of them that are specific to different species, different ancestries. Like there's an elven arcane duelist. That was one that
Oh.
was written by James Spahn. Um, and got a core of they can actually parry a spell with as long as they've got a blade in hand. So there's some.
Ooh.
Yeah, he's done a warlock class because I actually like the concept of the warlock as it's been developed in fifth edition, of the idea of somebody who's got a pact
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with some sort of more powerful deity, possibly not a god. The and the dynamics of that. So I kind of like that, and we've got a warlock in there for people who want to follow along with that idea, because that's very Elric, really. I mean, the Elric's relationship with Ariok in the old Michael Moorcock books was
Okay.
very, very much a warlock type of thing. Um, and also it allows people to play, since those who aren't familiar with original D&D Swords and Wizardry, but you can't have neutral clerics.
Right.
And so this is one way. I think neutral clerics are fine, but I also think it's kind of cooler if you have a different class type thing for neutral clerics. And so the warlock is actually somebody who would fit the bill with that neutral cleric concept,
Oh, neat.
especially since with neutral clerics you're tending to get Gary Gygax, he started out with an idea that there was law, and he had in mind, I think, a very Catholic Church type
Mm-hmm.
situation where
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
everybody would be a part of a single organization, and
Right.
that's where you had your clerics. And that falls apart as soon as you get into polytheism, where you've got
Mm-hmm.
lots and lots of different gods and warring. And anybody who's particularly familiar with specifically the ancient Greek deities, but most polytheistic religions tended to be a lot more transactional. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
interested in converting people, because there were all these gods out there. It was just, who are you
Yep.
giving your cash to, and who are you giving your prayers to?
Mm-hmm.
And it was transactional. You're going to get something back from the god, and so
Right.
that, again, you're in a very warlock sort of concept with
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
that can be used to manage something that's more polytheistic in terms of the world that the referees created to work in. I'm way off topic. I have no idea where we started this, and I'm just continuing on
What's in the
forward.
new? What's coming up for Mythmere Games? This is your extended
Oh
rules for
yeah,
Swords and Wizardry.
that's an old question. I left that question a while ago, and I'm just talking about the game in general now. Spring.
Spring is when it's
Oh,
coming. Yes.
and and a monster book.
I was about to say there. I heard rumors of a bestiary, so there is a monster book coming out.
Yeah, yeah, and we're pretty far forward with that. One of the real hard things about a monster book when you've published stuff in the past is what do you include in it and what do you not.
Okay.
Um, and so I think, and there are no guarantees here, but I think that where we've landed here is we're not going to try and do a comprehensive book like Monstrosities was for the earlier versions of Swords and Wizardry. So if it's in the Swords and Wizardry rulebook already, we're not going to put it into this book. You can look in
Okay.
your Swords and Wizardry rulebook. So that takes out a whole bunch of the monsters there. And then we are going to bring in a lot of the old advanced D&D monsters that were done, and those were in monstrosities. Those will probably reappear, but I'm probably going to add a little bit more here and there in terms of how to flavorfully use them, since
Mm,
we'll have more space, so there's less of a constraint there. So I'll probably add a little bit more stuff there. And then a bunch of the newer monsters from we're mainly focusing on the monsters that I wrote from monstrosities. There are some that I think are so cool that they've got to be in there, but we're trying to leave behind a lot of the monstrosity stuff for Frog God to do.
okay.
We'll and so we'll some but not all of the newer monsters from monstrosities, and then a brand new a set of brand new monsters. At the moment I think we've got 16 or 17. The target is to have about 75
Oh
new
wow.
monsters in the
How much
book.
new artwork are you going to be putting in?
Not 100% sure yet because what we've been doing is narrowing down the list first.
Gotcha.
And so once we've got, and now we've got the list, so we'll go and look and see which of the things from monstrosities are, because I brought from Frog God the ability to republish anything from monstrosities, including the art, but also left it with them that they could do it. So they're going to have their book over there. So if there are any art pieces that work really well with the sort of feel that we're trying to get, then we may use those. But for the most part, it'll be new art.
Okay.
And so there, and as to how much, not sure. Need to figure out whether we're working with a two column, whether and this is Susie's area, but whether
Mm,
we're working with a one column, which is not likely, or but whether it's a two column or a three column is going to make a lot of difference in terms of the art and the aspect ratio and so on and so
mm-hmm,
forth.
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
but we are now at the point where we can start talking to Dell and the other artists about these are going to be the things that we're going to get. So
Oh, that's
we'll
cool.
yeah.
And so you had talked about like Fargo doing their own thing and you kind of doing your own thing. Is there a change in feel for the game that you're bringing into Mythmere overall? Or like you're just trying to change like tweak something in specifically, or is it just kind of like a general? We wanted to put a fresh coat of paint on this.
Well, I think that there's always been my view of what cool fantasy is, which is probably more along the swords and sorcery approach. That's always been a pretty strong impetus behind Swords and Wizardry. But for at Frog God, you might have a fifth edition adventure, and then they would want to do it also for Swords and Wizardry. And so
Gotcha. Okay.
for there, it's coming from a different starting point. So it's not it's not really uh, it's not a directed purposive change.
Okay.
But I think that it will just be more. Um, it'll probably there will probably be fewer things that come from outside my view of what would be a cool fantasy thing, just because it's in a company that has business constraints.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. But it's still so you're more focused now. It's not
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
okay. Very cool. I I'm going to give you another tangent because someone has asked for that. They want to hear how you run your games. How does the co-creator of Osric and Swords and Wizardry run their table? They want your wisdom.
I mean, that's a big question. And I mean, you can. I had an old YouTube channel, the Uncle Matt's RPG Studio, I think it was called.
Oh, cool.
If anybody wants to go on that, there are some old games where you can actually see me running some games. I mean, I think I'm very. Uh, I talk to the players ahead of time and like, hey, what kind of adventures do you guys want to do?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because it makes a big difference whether you've got a party that's a heroic party or whether you've got guys that want to play anti-heroes or just something that's in a world where there are fewer um, supernatural alignments and it's more just the thing. Um, I'm probably pretty traditional. I mean, I give a lot of player agency to make decisions if they decide, hey, what we want to do is, find um, a village and rescue it. Then I'll run with that,
Okay.
and do it. I tend to be fairly good at winging it, um, and so I tend to be a lot. I panic a lot less if I am forced to wing it in
Gotcha.
an adventure. Whereas I think a lot of people, if the less comfortable you are with coming up with something on the fly, the more you want to try and be like, okay, guys, we've got an adventure. This is the thing that we're going to do, and we're going to stay on track with that until it's done. Then you can tell me what it is you want to do next, and then I will prepare a thing, and we will do that, down the road. So I think
Mhm.
that's just a style people
Disappeared.
have that
You're
depends on
back.
how.
Hold on. You disappeared and now you're back again. You're gone again. People can hear me, but they cannot hear you. Let's see. I'm watching to see if you're back. This might be. Oh, there you are. You're back again. So,
Okay.
plane shift again. We're talking to now Matt Finch from Earth 32, which would be good. Um, yeah, I totally. I enjoy it when my parties go off on tangents. I'm like, we're gonna go over here. So I had done a mini hex crawl with my basic fantasy group, just trying to get through like an enchanted wood to get to a group of extraplanar elves. And they got there, and I was like, okay, so you're down for the day. I figured they're going to go back south because I have a whole string of things that they could get done. And one of them went, well, I'm going to go find a CD bar and find out what's going on.
Mhm.
Okay, and the next thing I know, they were involved in coffee smuggling,
Mhm.
which was
Yeah,
just
it's
bizarre.
excuse me. No, it's not just the DM who's the issue there. I mean, I've had groups of players where I always think, okay, it's a sandbox campaign.
Hmm.
Here's the outline. Now you can do whatever you want. And the group of players wanted to have more direction about what it was that they ought to do. They felt like having the ability to do absolutely anything they want was kind of paralyzing in
Yeah.
terms of what they wanted to do. So I think everything comes down to the group and the DM in
Hmm.
terms of the way that things are going to go.
Yep. There's no one way to play.
Right,
Like
there really isn't.
right, and rules as written are a suggestion,
Mhm.
which is often things that we tend to overlook nowadays. Well, Matt, that is what I have for you. I am really thankful that you came on and you dealt with the technical glitches and speaking with alternate, like I don't know what the other versions of you are talking about right now, but I had a really good time talking with the ones that showed up on the stream
Yeah,
after you
we're and
disappeared
we're
over
all
time.
we're all very happy to have been on the show.
So I'm going to shut down the stream before we disappear entirely. Stay on the line for a little bit just so I can say thank you afterwards, folks. Thank you so much for being on and finding the stream after the first one went kablooey. I am back on tomorrow, and I'm going to have a hardwire to make sure this doesn't happen again with DM Scotty of Easy D6, which I'm really excited to chat with him as well. So that should be a lot of fun. I have had a blast, and thanks for all your crazy comments. Matt, I will talk with you offline really soon. Everybody
All right.
else, thank you so much, and you have a happy time. And until we see each other again, happy playing, everyone.